This is the image that destroyed an entire career. The man in this photo was called a hero. But after a single image was released to the public, everything changed for him. So what did he do? And why does this photo destroy his career? It all started in 2003 when a man named Walter Mitty lived a simple life as a quality control officer at the United States Customs. His life seemed ordinary and boring until one day everything changed. Walter received a call that would change his life forever. He was needed at JFK Airport in New York because there was a situation going on. When he arrived, he saw smoke coming from inside of a plane. He could also see firefighters running around like headless chickens with no idea what to do. It was absolute chaos. Walter quickly approached the pilot who came out of the plane and asked if everyone was okay. The pilot quickly responded, "Sir, please help us. There are people trapped inside the plane. We need your assistance." Walter immediately sprung into action. Without thinking twice about the danger, he ran towards the burning plane. He quickly opened the door and jumped inside. He then helped passengers get out of the plane as quickly as possible. At first, it seemed like a normal rescue operation, but what happened next was far from ordinary. As Walter entered the plane, he heard someone shout, "Grab the money." Someone had left behind a bag full of cash, which was sitting right next to the exit. At first he didn't pay any attention to it, but then he realized that it was his duty to retrieve it. He knew that the people who lost their lives in this incident would want justice to be served. And the best way to do so was to grab the money and give it to the authorities. So he quickly grabbed the bag full of cash and exited the plane. At first, everyone thought that Walter was a hero, and he became a local celebrity. Everyone praised him for his bravery. Newspapers wrote articles about him, and he was invited to talk shows. Everyone was congratulating him on his heroic actions. In fact, the general himself congratulated him in front of the entire crew. But this wasn't the end of it. The government wanted to reward him for his heroic actions. They wanted to offer him a position within the army. At first, Walter refused it because he didn't want to leave his job. But the general insisted, saying that this was the least they could do for him. So he accepted the offer and soon started working at the military base. But problems started almost immediately. Soldiers under his command couldn't believe that he was the same guy who saved the passenger plane. In fact, many of them thought that he was a fraud who stole his medals. They said that there were cameras at the airport, and someone should have recorded his heroic actions. Some soldiers even said that he probably made up the entire story. And the more they thought about it, the more it sounded like a lie. After all, how could a simple quality control officer know how to save a burning plane? How could he jump into a dangerous situation without having any training? And why did nobody else try to save the money? The soldiers were skeptical about Walter's story, and even though he tried to explain himself, they just didn't believe him. This caused major problems in Walter's personal life as well. His wife Mary was very supportive in the beginning. She was proud of her husband and loved the fact that he became a hero. However, as time went on, she started doubting his story too. She began questioning whether the entire thing was true or not. After all, the army seemed to have doubts about it. And if they believed he was a fraud, then maybe he really was one. Every night, Mary would question Walter about the incident. She would ask him about small details, and every time he answered, she would look disappointed. Even his children stopped being proud of him and started making fun of him. They would say things like, "Dad, Are you really a hero? Or Dad, do you think we should ask Grandma and Grandpa for the video recording of your heroic actions? Of course, this hurt Walter deeply. He didn't deserve any of this. He was a hero, and he had proof to back it up. He went to the general and asked him for the recordings. Maybe if he showed them to his family, they would believe him. But the general denied his request. He told Walter that there were no recordings, because it was a very old camera, and the footage was automatically erased after a certain period of time. Walter didn't believe him, but he didn't have enough power to fight against the army, so he had to accept the truth. However, he never gave up hope. He kept believing that one day he would clear his name, and everyone would finally believe him. But he didn't know that this would never happen until a random person leaked the footage of the event. One day Walter was watching the news when something shocking happened. A man on TV was talking about the incident that happened years ago. But this guy said that there were recordings that prove Walter's heroism. Walter couldn't believe his ears. He immediately called the news station, but they didn't answer the phone. He called them again and again, but they still didn't reply. Then he remembered that the internet was a thing now. So he connected his laptop to the internet and started searching for videos. That's when he saw it. The video had been uploaded online by a random person, and thousands of people were already watching it. It showed how Walter jumped out of the burning plane and grabbed the bag full of money. It also showed how brave he was and how he put his life on the line to save the money. But here's the most surprising part. It turned out that the person who uploaded the video was one of the passengers. He uploaded it online to prove that Walter was a hero. But as you can imagine, this caused major problems for Walter. Now everyone knew that he lied, and he was officially a fraud. The general was furious and ordered Walter to be arrested immediately. He was charged with stealing government funds, and Walter had no choice but to confess. He admitted that he took the money from the plane because he thought it was his duty. But this wasn't good enough for the government. They threw the book at him and sentenced him to 10 years in prison. The whole country was against him. Newspapers wrote bad things about him, and everyone hated him. They said that he was a liar and that he only pretended to be a hero. Even his wife left him and divorced him. Walter was completely alone. But here's the thing. After he confessed, more people came forward with stories. It turned out that many of the people who were rescued by Walter during the incident also took money from the plane. And if the government was able to punish Walter for his actions, they could also take action against these people. So the government decided to make a deal with Walter. If he testified against the other people, they would reduce his sentence. But this presented a new problem. Where were those people? Most of them disappeared after the incident. It seemed like they vanished into thin air. But Walter had an idea where to find them. He knew that they were afraid of getting into trouble, so they probably hid the money and hoped that nobody would ever find out. But Walter knew exactly where they hid it. In the beginning, the other people tried to hide the evidence. They said that they didn't take any money from the plane, and that Walter was lying. But when Walter exposed them, they had no choice but to come clean. They all admitted that they took money from the plane, and some of them even took large sums of money. But this didn't change anything. Walter still had to go to jail, but at least his sentence was reduced to 4 years. But while all of this was happening, someone leaked another video. This video showed what happened after Walter exited the burning plane. It showed firefighters surrounding him and giving him pats on the back. The video also showed how happy and proud they were of his actions. They called him a hero and thanked him for saving the money. This video changed everything. Once again, Walter was a hero. The government apologized for arresting him, and the general personally apologized in front of the entire staff. The president even spoke about him and said that he was a role model for every citizen. Walter was finally free, and his reputation was restored. So the question is, what did he do after this? Well, Walter continued working at the army until he retired. He spent his remaining days traveling the world and meeting interesting people. He also became famous and starred in several commercials. So even though he went through a lot of pain and suffering, he eventually came out on top.